An alien SOS reached Earth. The Deathworlders came in force. The message arrived in the middle of the night, hidden among static and the quiet hum of space. It wasn't meant for everyone. It wasn't meant for her. But Maria was the one who heard it. She worked alone in a small observatory station on the northern edge of Canada, where the winters were long and the nights even longer. The stars were her only company now. Once, a year ago, she had shared this job with Tom, her closest friend. Since childhood, the one person who could make her laugh when the cold felt too heavy. But Tom had left. He'd taken an offer from the Central Research Hub in New Geneva, far away from the quiet snow and the crackle of the old radio's dotted first. They had called each other every week, then once a month. Then the calls stopped. Maria told herself it was just distance. People got busy. But in the still hours of the night, when the sky was wide and empty, she wondered if she had lost more than a friend. That night, when the signal came, she almost ignored it. The monitor blipped once, twice, then screamed with a flood of strange frequencies. She adjusted the dials, expecting to hear the usual cosmic noise, but instead, she heard a voice. It wasn't human. The words came in a trembling rhythm, strange vowels stretched and twisted, but the translator eye on her console quickly caught up. "Help us, please. We can't hold them off any longer." Maria's breath caught. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, unsure whether to record or reply. The message repeated. There was fear in it, raw and desperate, the kind that made you want to reach through the screen and hold someone's hand. She thought of Tom then, the way his voice had sounded the last time they spoke, the awkward pauses, the quiet that had grown between them like a wall. She had wanted to call him 100 times, to tell him she missed him, but she had never found the words. What could she say? That she was lonely? That she was afraid the world was changing too fast? Now, an alien world was saying it for her. Maria saved the recording and sent it to Central Command. Protocol said she had to. But she also copied it into her personal folder. She knew Tom was at Central. He would see it. Maybe, for the first time in months, they would have something to talk about. By morning, the reply from Earth was swift and clear. Deploy the Deathworlder cores. The name alone carried weight. Humans had been called Deathworlders by the galaxy since first contact. To the stars, Earth was a violent, dangerous place. Storms, predators, diseases, and a gravity that could crush weaker species. Yet here, life had thrived. Humans had thrived. That toughness had made them feared, but also respected. Maria wasn't a soldier. She wasn't part of the cores, but she would be the one to guide them to the source of the signal. When Tom's name appeared on her incoming comms, she froze. For a moment, she thought about letting it ring out, the way he had let her last call go unanswered. But she tapped, "Accept, Maria?" His voice was warmer than she remembered. "I just got your report. It's real, isn't it?" "Yes," she said. "It's not just some old probe or interference. They're alive out there. And they're scared." A long pause filled the line. She wanted to tell him she was scared too, but the words felt too heavy. Instead, she asked, "You're going with them, aren't you?" "I am," he said. "We'll need a signal specialist." "I put your name in." Her chest tightened. "Me? I'm not cores." "You're better," Tom said softly. "You're stubborn. And you listen." The mission brief came an hour later. It would launch within the week. Maria's small station became the center of a storm. Engineers, pilots, armored troops preparing for a world no human had ever seen. Through it all, she kept thinking about the alien voice in the recording, the quiet terror in it, the way it echoed her own unspoken feelings. She didn't want to lose more people. Not again. The night before departure, she found Tom in the hangar. He was checking his gear. the same way he used to check the old radio equipment they had fixed together in the early days. "You could have called, you know," she said, before she could stop herself. He looked up, surprised. "I wanted to, but I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me." They stood there, the silence between them thick, but not empty. "Not anymore. I'm glad you did," she said finally. When the Deathworlders launched, Maria was at their side. The great engines roared, lifting them toward the stars. Somewhere out there, a people they had never met were holding on, hoping help would come. And this time, it would. The Deathworlder Corps did not waste time. Within hours of confirming the alien distress call, preparations began. The hangar bays were a thunder of activity, armored vehicles being loaded, weapons checked, survival kits packed. Maria had never seen so many soldiers in one place. They looked like they had been carved out of the mountains themselves, strong, calm, and carrying the quiet weight of people who had been through worse. Tom was among them. He moved with a steady confidence, his face set in focus. She watched from a distance at first, unsure if she should walk over. They had spoken briefly since her arrival at Central Command, but the gap between them still felt wide. It was strange. She could work alongside complete strangers without hesitation. But with Tom, it was like trying to cross a frozen river. You could see the other side, but the ice might crack if you stepped wrong. That evening, she sat at her workstation, running the alien signal through a dozen filters. She had memorized the words by now. "Help us, please. We can't hold them off any longer." But she kept listening. There was something in the pauses, in the faint tremor of the alien voice. It reminded her of the last time she had spoken to Tom before he moved away. How he had paused, searching for words, then settled for, "We'll talk soon." They never really did. Her hands hovered over the terminal. She could send him a personal message, just a few lines. "I'm glad we're working together again." Or maybe, "I missed you." But each time she tried to type, the words felt too heavy, or too light, or not right at all. Instead, she focused on the mission. The aliens, called the Tathran, had been under attack for months. The invaders were unknown, but their tactics were brutal, destroying infrastructure, poisoning water, cutting off escape routes. The Tathran's defenses had collapsed. They had reached out to Earth not because they thought humans were the kindest species, but because they had heard the stories of Deathworlders who survived in firestorms, who crossed toxic deserts with nothing but a canteen, who outlasted predators bigger than tanks. Maria thought about that as she ran the signal data again. Humans weren't perfect. They argued, drifted apart, made mistakes, but when someone cried for help, they came. Even if they didn't know exactly what to say, even if it hurt. The next morning, she was summoned to the briefing room. Commander Hayes, the leader of the Deathworlder Corps, stood at the head of the table. His voice was steady as he spoke. "We're leaving in 36 hours. We have no map of the enemy, no guarantee our weapons will work. What we do have is adaptability. That's why we win." He glanced at Maria. "You'll be our link to the Tathran until we land. We can't fight for them if we don't understand them." She nodded, the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. It wasn't just about saving strangers. Somehow, in a way she couldn't fully explain, it felt tied to saving something else, something closer. Later that day, she found herself in the equipment bay. Tom was there, adjusting the seal on his helmet. She hesitated and stepped closer. "You'll be on the front lines," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," he replied. "That's the job." "I keep thinking about that voice," she admitted. They didn't just call for soldiers. They called for anyone who would listen. Tom's eyes softened. "And you listened," she shrugged. "It's what I do." There was a pause. Not the cold, brittle kind that had marked their conversations before, but a quieter, searching one. "You know," he said slowly, "when I moved to New Geneva, I thought we'd talk all the time. But then the days just got away from me, and the longer it went, the harder it was to start again." Maria looked at him, feeling that familiar ache. "I know. I felt the same." Another pause. Then Tom smiled, small but real. "Maybe this mission's our chance to start again." The words sat between them like a fragile bridge. Not fixed yet, but enough to step onto. The next day, the Deathworlder ship, the Resolute Dawn, was loaded and ready. From the observation deck, Maria watched the crews run final checks. The hull gleamed under the hangar lights, a machine built for survival in the harshest corners of the galaxy. She thought about the Tathran, waiting for help that might not come in time. She thought about Tom, standing somewhere on that ship, ready to face an enemy he'd never met. And she thought about herself, a signal specialist who had spent too long hiding in static, afraid to reach out. Maybe this was what being human meant. Not just surviving on a dangerous world, but daring to step forward when someone called for you. Even if you were scared. Even if you didn't have the perfect words. When the launch signal came, the hangar trembled with the roar of engines. Maria strapped into her seat beside the communications console, headset in place. As the Resolute Dawn lifted from Earth's surface, she sent out a single transmission toward Tathran 4. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of every Deathworlder on board. "Hold on, we're coming." She didn't know if the aliens would understand the exact words, but she hoped they would feel the meaning. Beside her, Tom glanced over, and the Resolute Dawn cut through the dark like a silver blade, stars slipping past in silent streaks. The journey to Tathran 4 took 4 days. For most of that time, Maria stayed at her station in the communications bay, monitoring the alien signal and sending short status updates. The message from the Tathran came through often, sometimes weaker, sometimes frantic. Their words were still trembling, full of fear. "The skies burn. They are everywhere. Please hurry." Every time Maria heard it, she felt a knot tighten in her chest. She wanted to tell them more than "we're coming." She wanted to promise they would survive. But she knew promises could break, and the truth was, they didn't know what they were walking into. Tom was busy with the Deathworlder soldiers, running combat drills and checking supplies. She caught glimpses of him in the corridors. A quick nod here, a brief exchange there. It was better than before, but there was still a gap. Words they needed to say hung in the air, waiting for the right moment. On the morning of the 4th day, the planet came into view. From orbit, Tathran 4 looked wounded. One hemisphere was covered in thick, gray clouds, lightning flashing within. The other was scorched, the land split by deep cracks and rivers of glowing red. The atmosphere readings showed high toxicity levels, but breathable air in the remaining city zones. That meant they could land, if they could survive whatever was down there. The Resolute Dawn entered descent. The view from the cockpit showed a ruined city sprawled below, towers half collapsed, streets littered with debris, entire districts swallowed by ash. In the distance, shapes moved, too large and too quick to be natural. As the landing gear deployed, Maria's comm panel lit up. The Tathran were hailing them directly. The translator scrambled, then produced a halting butt. "Clear message. We see you." We thought you would not come." Maria pressed her headset. "We came," she said simply. "We always come." The landing shook the ship hard. Outside, the air was thick and heavy, carrying the smell of burnt metal. The Deathworlder corps moved first, forming a perimeter. Their armor reflected the pale, sickly sunlight. Then the Tathran appeared. They were tall and slender, with segmented limbs and shimmering, glass-like eyes. Their movements were slow, careful, as if every step was a decision. The one at the front wore a sash of woven silver. Their leader, Elder Kivran. "Deathworlders," Kivran said through the translator, voice trembling. "We did not know if the stories were true." Commander Hayes stepped forward. "They are," he said. "And now you're part of them." While the soldiers spoke with the elders about defenses, Maria focused on setting up the communications link. She could hear the faint sounds of movement outside the safe zone. Not human, not Tathran. Every instinct told her that whatever was out there was watching. Tom came over, setting down a crate of equipment beside her. "Still think this is just a signal job?" he asked lightly. Maria glanced at him. "No, this is more than that." They worked side by side in quiet for a while. At one point, their hands brushed as they reached for the same cable. It was a small thing, but Maria felt it. She wondered if he did too. By evening, the Tathran had led them to a sheltered square, where survivors had gathered. There were fewer than Maria expected, maybe a few hundred. Most looked weak, their limbs trembling from hunger or exhaustion. "They've been running for months," Tom said quietly as they watched the refugees receive food and water, never staying in one place long enough to rebuild. Maria nodded. "I know what that feels like." He turned to her, puzzled. "Not the running," she explained. "The not having a place where things feel right anymore. After you left." She trailed off, unsure if she should finish. Tom's gaze softened. "I didn't mean to make you feel like that." "I know," she said, "but you did, and I didn't know how to say it." There it was, a piece of the distance between them, spoken aloud. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. Before Tom could reply, the warning alarms went off. Movement on the perimeter. The soldiers snapped into formation, weapons ready. Through the dust, shapes emerged, tall, armored, moving with a strange insect-like rhythm. The enemy. Maria had never seen anything like them. They weren't machines, not fully. Their armor pulsed faintly, like it was alive. They didn't speak. They didn't slow. The first clash was fast and brutal. The Deathworlders fought with a mix of precision and improvisation, shifting formation, using rubble for cover, creating distractions to draw the enemy in. The Tathran watched in awe. Their own soldiers had never fought like this. From her position at the comms, Maria relayed enemy positions, warning the squads where to move. It wasn't much, but it felt like she was part of the fight. Minutes later, the enemy pulled back, leaving only silence and the crackle of fire. The Tathran began to whisper among themselves, words Maria couldn't understand, but felt the meaning of hope. That night, as the survivors settled in, Maria sat outside the makeshift command tent, watching the stars. Tom joined her, sitting quietly at first. "They'll be back," he said. "I know. But so will we," he added. Maria looked at him, really looked. For the first time since he had left, she felt like the distance between them wasn't impossible. Maybe. That was what made Deathworlders dangerous. Not just their toughness, but their refusal to give up on each other. She smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure they're ready." The night after the first skirmish was quiet. Too quiet. The streets of the ruined city lay in shadow, the only light coming from the faint glow of the alien crystals embedded in the broken walls. Maria sat at her comm station inside the small safe zone the Deathworlders had set up. Her headset crackled now and then with updates from the patrol teams. She could hear the faint hum of the Tathran refugees sleeping nearby, their bodies emitting a soft, insect-like trill when at rest. Tom was on perimeter duty. Every now and then, Maria thought about calling him over the comm, just to say something simple. "You okay?" But she didn't. She told herself it was because she didn't want to distract him. The truth was, she didn't know how to start a conversation that mattered. She replayed the alien SOS again on her screen. The voice was the same as the first night she'd heard it, but now she could picture the faces of the Tathrin who had spoken it. Their leader, Elder Kivron, had thanked her earlier for bringing hope. The word had stayed with her. She wanted to believe it. Around midnight, the comms lit up with an urgent signal. "Contact on the east side," one of the soldiers reported. "Multiple hostiles." Maria's pulse quickened. She tapped into the helmet feed from the forward squad. The enemy moved like shadows, given shape. Tall, armored forms gliding across the rubble, eyes glowing faintly through their strange helmets. They didn't speak. They didn't hesitate. Tom's voice came through the line. "Maria, I need their movement patterns, now." She swallowed and scanned the feed. "They're circling. They're trying to push you toward the collapsed tram station. Don't go that way. It's a trap." There was a burst of static. Then Tom again. "Copy that." Redirecting. Maria watched as the Deathworlders shifted formation, breaking the enemy's attempt to corner them. They fought hard, using everything: broken street lamps for cover, collapsing walls to block paths, even throwing chunks of debris to confuse the attackers. It was raw, adaptive fighting, exactly what the Tathrin had never seen before. But the enemy didn't just fight with brute strength. They learned. Maria could see it in the way they started avoiding certain moves, anticipating the soldiers' attacks. That realization chilled her. Then she saw it, one of the creatures slipping around the side, heading straight for the comms hub. Straight for her. Maria's training was nothing compared to the soldiers, but she wasn't helpless. She grabbed the emergency flare from the wall and ran toward the open square. When the creature appeared, towering above her, she ignited the flare and hurled it into a pile of shattered crystal. The flare's heat reacted instantly, setting off a bright, blinding burst of light. The creature recoiled, hissing in a sound that made her teeth ache. Seconds later, 2 Deathworlders arrived, driving it back into the dark. When the fight ended, the square was littered with broken stone and the faint shimmer of enemy blood. The survivors whispered again, the word hope rippling through their language. Tom found her near the comms hub, breathing hard. His helmet was scratched, his armor dented. "You could have stayed inside," he said. "I couldn't," she replied. "You needed warning, and they were coming for us." He studied her for a long moment. "You've still got that same stubborn streak," he said finally. She gave a faint smile. "You always said it would get me in trouble." Tom's expression softened, but then he looked away. "Maria, I've been meaning to say, I know I wasn't there much after I left. I didn't know how to come back, even just to talk." Her chest ached at the honesty in his voice. "I didn't know how to reach out either," she admitted. "I guess we both just stayed quiet." "Yeah," he said, "but maybe we can stop doing that." The words were simple, but they felt like the first solid step on that fragile bridge between them. The rest of the night passed without another attack, but no one slept deeply. The enemy was out there, learning, waiting. By morning, Commander Hayes called a meeting. "They're testing our defenses," he said. "Next time, they'll come harder. We can't just hold this ground. We have to take the fight to them." The plan was risky. A scouting team would venture beyond the ruined city into the wasteland. The wasteland outside the city was a graveyard of stone and silence. Blackened cliffs rose like broken teeth, and the ground was cracked and dry, as if the planet itself had stopped breathing. The small scouting team moved slowly, weapons ready, eyes on the jagged horizon. Maria walked between Tom and one of the Deathworlder soldiers, her comm scanner sweeping for signals. Every few minutes, she caught faint echoes, low, rhythmic pulses coming from somewhere ahead. The enemy. No one spoke much. The air was too heavy for casual words, and each step seemed to carry them deeper into unknown territory. But Maria felt something had shifted between her and Tom since the night before. The silence wasn't as sharp. It felt shared. They stopped at a ridge to rest. Below, in the distance, Maria saw strange movement. Dozens of the biomechanical creatures, marching in tight formation toward a canyon. Their armor shimmered faintly, almost blending into the rocks. They're heading somewhere, Tom said, crouching beside her. And they're not just wandering. That's organized movement. Maria adjusted her scanner. The pulses she'd been hearing matched their pace exactly. They're following a signal, she said. Some kind of command frequency. Commander Hayes studied the view. If that's true, then whatever's sending that signal is running this whole invasion. We find it. We cut the head off the snake. But the canyon they were entering was unstable, filled with glowing crystal formations and deep fractures. Hayes looked at Maria. Think you can track the exact source from inside? She nodded, though her heart pounded. Yes, but I'll need time. Tom leaned closer. We'll give you that time. They moved down toward the canyon, using the rocks for cover. The closer they got, the louder the hum became, a sound that seemed to vibrate in Maria's chest. The crystals glowed brighter here, their surfaces webbed with hairline cracks. Maria stopped and ran her scanner again. It's not just the signal. These crystals are unstable. If something big shakes this place, Tom finished for her. The whole canyon could collapse. Hayes's eyes narrowed. That's a trap waiting to happen. It was risky, but it was also an opportunity. The Deathworlders could lure the enemy's main force into the canyon, then detonate the crystals in. A chain reaction. It could wipe out the command unit and most of the attackers in one strike. Maria felt the weight of the choice. If we do this, there's no turning back. And it could go wrong fast. Hayes smiled faintly. That's how Deathworlders do things. Adapt, improvise, survive. They set the plan in motion. Maria stayed in a narrow alcove halfway up the canyon wall, her scanner locked on the signal source. Tom stayed close, helping set up a relay that would guide the enemy and Dot as they worked. Tom glanced at her. When this is over, do you think we'll talk? Really talk? Maria hesitated, then looked at him. I want to. I just don't. Always know how to start. Tom's expression softened. And I'll start. Something in her chest eased at that. She didn't answer right away, but her small smile said enough. The first part of the plan went smoothly. The Deathworlders attacked a patrol, drawing them into pursuit. The enemy followed, their movements precise and relentless. As predicted, they poured into the canyon, drawn toward the relay signal. From her vantage point, Maria could see the command unit, a taller figure with heavier armor, flanked by guards. The pulses from it were stronger, vibrating through the crystals. Now? Tom asked, ready on the detonator. Not yet, Maria said. They're not far enough in. The moments dragged. Her palms were slick, her heart hammering. She thought of the Tathran survivors waiting back in the city. She thought of the alien voice that had called for help. And she thought of Tom, here beside her, trusting her judgment. Finally, she saw it. The entire enemy force was in the canyon. Now! Tom hit the detonator. The first explosion ripped through the nearest crystal cluster, sending shards of glowing rock flying. The shockwave jumped from one crystal to the next, each one bursting in a blinding flash. The canyon walls groaned, then collapsed inward. The ground shook so hard Maria fell to her knees. Dust and light swallowed the canyon in a roar that seemed to last forever. When it cleared, nothing moved below. The enemy force was gone. The signal had gone silent. Maria and Tom exchanged a long look. Relief washed through her, but also something else. The quiet knowledge that they had done this together. Back in the city, the Tathran greeted them with something like awe. Elder Kivran spoke softly through the translator. You are not just warriors. You are saviors." Maria shook her head. "No, we just listen and act." That night, as they sat near the perimeter wall, Tom broke the quiet. "Maria, I don't want to lose touch again, not after this." She looked at him, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "Then don't," she said simply, and for the first time since he had left, she believed they wouldn't. The Deathworlders had turned the tide, and Maria had turned a corner she thought was lost forever, because HFY wasn't just about surviving the galaxy. It was about holding on to the people who mattered, no matter how far they'd gone. Asterisk, the canyon lay quiet at first. The echoes of the detonated crystals had faded, leaving only the wind whistling through jagged rocks. Maria crouched on the ridge, scanning for any signs of movement. Tom sat beside her, helmet slightly cracked, but still intact. He didn't speak at first, only watching the canyon below. Maria could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands flexed and unflexed around the grip of his weapon. "They're not done," she said quietly. "Something's coming." Tom looked at her. "I was hoping this would be the end." She shook her head. "They adapt. That's what makes them dangerous. They won't give up." Minutes passed. Then a low, rolling sound came from deeper within the canyon. The enemy had regrouped, larger than before, moving with even more coordination. Their armor glimmered under the weak light and the pulses. From their command unit were faint but steady. Maria felt her stomach tighten. She thought of the Tathrin, waiting in the city, of Elder Kivrin's grateful, fearful eyes, and of the months of silence between her and Tom, the calls that never happened, the words that never crossed. She didn't want to lose anyone else. Hayes's voice came over the comm. "We set the trap. We hold our positions. Wait for my signal." Maria checked the canyon carefully. The crystals had been arranged so that a chain reaction could collapse the entire section, but timing was everything. One misstep, and the Deathworlders themselves could be buried. Tom leaned closer. "We've done this together before. We can do it again." Maria glanced at him. The distance between them felt smaller now. Not gone, not fixed, but manageable. Together, she agreed. The first wave of enemies advanced cautiously into the canyon. The Deathworlders fired controlled bursts, directing them along the path. Maria had calculated. The aliens fell into the trap almost perfectly, moving toward the unstable crystal zones. Maria's hands shook slightly as she adjusted the timing. One wrong calculation could ruin everything. She thought of the late nights she and Tom had spent fixing equipment, together back on Earth. She thought of the words she had never said. "I missed you." The thought steadied her. If she could manage. This, maybe she could manage the rest too. Minutes felt like hours as the enemy poured deeper. Tom moved beside her, keeping watch, signaling with his hand when he saw something she hadn't. Their silent communication worked better than any words. Finally, Hayes gave the signal. Maria pressed the detonator sequence. Light and sound exploded. Around them, the crystals ignited in a chain reaction, sending waves of heat and energy racing through the canyon. The enemy's armored forms were thrown into the air by the blast, then buried under the falling walls of rock. Dust and smoke filled the canyon, leaving only silence. Maria lowered her hands, chest heaving. Tom reached out, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "We did it," he said. She looked at him and smiled. "We did it, together." The Deathworlders quickly moved in to confirm. The enemy force was shattered. The command unit had been destroyed, and most of the remaining attackers had retreated. The Tathrin survivors, watching from afar, erupted in cautious cheers. Elder Kivran approached Maria and Tom. "You humans, you do not give up," he said. His voice carried wonder and respect. "We owe you our lives." Maria shook her Head, we just do what we must. That's what humans, Deathworlders, do. Later, as the sun set over the scarred landscape, Maria and Tom walked along the ridge overlooking the canyon. The sky was tinged with red and gold, the light reflecting off the shattered crystals like tiny stars. I never wanted us to drift. Apart like we did, Tom said quietly. Maria glanced at him, feeling the weight of months of distance melt away. I didn't either, she admitted, but maybe we needed this to see we could face impossible things together. He smiled softly. Then maybe we can face the rest of life too, together. The canyon below was silent now, the enemy broken, the Tatharin safe. Maria felt a surge of hope, not just for the mission, but for the small, fragile bridge they were rebuilding between them. She realized then that HFY wasn't just about defeating alien invaders or surviving the galaxy. It was about holding on to what mattered, about connecting when it was hardest, and about daring to reach out even after months of distance and silence. As night fell, the stars above Tatharin 4 sparkled like tiny beacons. Maria and Tom stood, side by side, tired but unbroken. They didn't need words right then. Their shared strength, their shared hope, and